The purpose of this tutorial will be to show how to work with a code base scaffolded with Generator Ribarich WordPress. And in particular, it is about an idea how WordPress themes and plugins should be developed using modern software development practices. But in particular, this focuses on the Generator Ribarich WordPress. So you can find the link to that repository in the description of this video, but it can also, so this is the generator, and I ran that generator to create a child theme on this website I called tutorial. And here are the files that the generator has scaffolded. So I scaffolded a theme and I called it a cool theme. And I haven't done any changes to this other than no changes to this. So this I just ran the generator. So at first, after the generator runs, we will have an empty repository. So maybe before we start making changes, we can make an initial commit so that in case we mess anything up, we can go back to the initial state. So first of all, usually you're going to want to use some kind of a parent theme. And in this case, I am using Astra. So here in style.css, I have to add Astra as the template, so as the parent theme. So I'm going to do that and say Astra is the parent theme. And once I have done that, I can go into the backend and activate my cool theme. There it is. Okay, so since Astra is the parent theme, here on the Hello World post, nothing should be changed. Okay, so now let's go through some things that I want to cover in this tutorial, and actually an overview of things that I can cover you can find as chapters. So the first thing we're going to cover is enqueuing styles. So if you want to make some style, and let's say we call this single post.scss. So we're making a style that is going to be used on single posts. And let's say that we want to do something not too advanced. Let's say that we want to change the background color of this to blue. So let's identify some nice class name for this. I'm gonna say primary, and then inside of primary, I'm gonna have, maybe this is the good class, Astra article single. So Astra article single. And let's say I want to say background color blue. Okay, now how do I enqueue this? One thing to keep in mind is that the generator is made such that you should never change functions.php. So you don't, in general, edit things here. There are some exceptions where you might have to, but in general, you don't modify the things in functions.php. Instead, you work in the source directory. And the source directory has this assets.php class, which is intended for enqueuing assets. So in particular, we have this enqueue scripts and styles method. So in that method, I'm going to say, well, first, I'm not going to make any condition just to check that it works. And yes, of course, before I start doing anything, I need to do npm run start so that any JavaScript or CSS I write actually gets built. Okay, and then I can do wp enqueue style. Okay, now how do I enqueue my style, which I called single post.scss? Well, if you go to functions.php, you can see that there is this prefix entry, and this is configured at the time when you generate the project using the Generator Ribarich WordPress. And so the way you enqueue any kind of asset is that you first put the prefix and then you put the file name. In my case, the file name is single post. So if we just do it that way, let's just test it. In this case, it should be enqueued on all pages, including this one. And then we can see that this turns blue. But now I don't want this to be enqueued on things like the home page, for example, or some kind of archive page. So I'm just going to write here if is single. That should only enqueue it if it's on the single blog post page. Let's see if that works. Yep, it still works. So that is great. Okay, so that is how styles are enqueued. Now let's talk about writing and enqueuing JavaScript. So I'm going to, for this, I have to stop this thing. And let's say I make a new JavaScript file. Actually, this is Astra, so this is not what I wanted. Actually, we can go back to the single layout later. So now that we have this, I'm going to make progress commit so that we don't lose any of our work. Okay. Now let's make a JavaScript file. So you will see that the generator scaffolds a sample script. And the purpose of this is really just to give you this tsconfig.json because it encourages you to use TypeScript. So if you know TypeScript, it would be preferable to write your script as TypeScript. So I'm going to make a new test script and I'm going to want to use TypeScript. So I'm going to go into the sample script and I'm going to copy this tsconfig.json. Just make sure that it looks good, and it does. Okay, and then I'm going to go into tsconfig.json and add a reference. I actually don't want it to look at sample script at all, so I'm just going to say test script. So if you make a TypeScript script, then you need to reference the path to the folder where you wrote that script in tsconfig.json. If you use just regular JavaScript, then you do not need to do this. But in this case, I'm showing the more advanced example that uses TypeScript. So this step would be skipped if you're using regular JavaScript, but I'm not. And so I'm going to call the script testscript.ts, so TypeScript, and I'm going to make a function called say hi that takes in a name and of type string, and it returns void. And inside of that string, I'm going to say console.log hello name. There we go. And then I am going to call that function and say hi, and I'm going to pass in world. Okay, so now I wrote my script. I added it to tsconfig.json. There's two more things I have to do. First, I have to add the script to Webpack, and I'm going to remove the sample script because I don't want it to actually be built. So instead of that, I'm going to call it a test script, and I'm going to change the path to test script and test script. There we go. Okay. Now that we have done all of that, we can do npm run start again. So you do need to stop this npm run start process when you modify Webpack configuration. That is why I stopped npm run start. And now that I have done that, you can see the test script has been built. And the cool thing is that you don't need to worry, where is this test script? How do I enqueue it? What version it is? You don't need to worry about any of that. So now let's talk about how to enqueue this script. So we again go to assets.php, and let's say that we just want to enqueue this script everywhere. In that case, I would say wp enqueue script. And now the question is, what is the hook name of this script? It works the same as with styles. So first we use the prefix, and then after the prefix, we use the Webpack entry point name. So whatever we put over here, this is the Webpack entry point name. In this case, I put test script. So I'm gonna write test script. Okay, and so now when I reload this page and go to the console, it should say hello world. And it does, from test script, and it has mappings, so it does show that it's from TypeScript. Okay, so that is how we enqueue scripts and styles. Now, oftentimes when you write JavaScript, you're going to want to pass some data to that JavaScript that comes from PHP. So let's say that in this script, where is our script? So test script. Let's say that instead of saying hello world, let's say that we want to echo out hello and then, I don't know, for example, the name of the site. So first we need, so we want to somehow pass to this script the name of the website that it is running on. So how do we do that? Well, first we need to know the WordPress function for that. So WordPress function get site name, and that should, okay, so get blog info. And then I need to pass in the name. Okay, so that's how we get information about the name of the site. Now, how do we pass that to the script? For that, we use DynamicJs. And as you can see, we have DynamicJs and DynamicCss. In this case, we're going to use DynamicJs. And you will see that the generator already imported things from a library called WP Utilitatem. And it imported an attribute called inline asset. So the purpose of this attribute is to only enqueue certain dynamic data on the page, in other words, dynamic JavaScript, when a script that needs that data runs on the page. So in this case, we have this test script and we want to pass data to this test script. So the way we do that is we make a function, and let's call it, the name doesn't really matter, but test script data. Okay, and then here I'm gonna add the PHP attribute called inline asset, and I need to pass an argument to this attribute. The argument should be the name of the script that we want to attach this data to. In this case, that is cool test script. I actually don't remember if we need to write the prefix here, so we're going to test it. Maybe we only need to write test script instead of cool test script. We will see. But okay, so now over here, I'm going to say site name equals get blog info name. And then I'm going to return. Now, whatever JavaScript this function returns is JavaScript that is going to be added inline on the page if the script we are using is enqueued. So here I'm now just writing JavaScript code. So first of all, I'm gonna write something just kind of like a test. So I'm gonna say console.log hello from DynamicJs script. And let's see if that works. So since our other script says hello world, this other script should also get enqueued, and yes, it does. Okay. And now if we want to pass in data, we can say window.testScript data and we can make it into an object, and then we can say window.testScriptData.blogName equals, and then here we're going to use this because it's a string, and we need to pass in site name. So that should work. And then in the test script, testscript.ts, here we should be able to pass window.testScriptData.blogName as string, because TypeScript doesn't know. So it could complain test script data does not exist on type window. Yeah, that's a problem. So I'm just going to say TypeScript ignore. I don't want to be bothered with that right now. Okay. So let's see if that works. Yeah, it says hello tutorial 1. So it's no longer saying hello world. Now it's saying hello tutorial 1, because in window.testScriptData we have the blog name. So that is how you pass PHP data to JavaScript. And an important thing to note is that if we didn't enqueue the test script, then this dynamic JavaScript would also not be enqueued. So if I go back to assets.php and I comment out this line so that we don't enqueue the test script, then you will see that also the stuff from the DynamicJs doesn't run. And this is very useful because it means that no unnecessary JavaScript will be added to the page if it's not needed. This is extremely important for site performance, and that's why there is this tool that helps you with enqueuing dynamic JavaScript and attaching it to some script. DynamicCss works in the same way. So if I wanted to also add some inline CSS attached to, let's say, this common or single post style, I would just, again, make a function called function, I don't know, single post inline CSS. And then from that, I could return some CSS, which can be literally anything. So you can, I don't know, make, I don't know, let's change the background of this comment. So we can say comment background color red important. And we're going to add an attribute to this. So inline asset. And again, we have to pass in the name of the script, which is cool single post. Okay, there it is. And if I refresh the page, you will see that this now becomes red because we injected dynamic CSS. So that's how DynamicJS and DynamicCss works. Okay, so now let's uncomment this and let's commit our changes. Okay, and now moving on, let's talk about one last thing that is used here, and that is dependency injection. So you will notice that classes like main have this, like, they have constructor properties. Now you might wonder, well, constructor arguments actually. Now you might wonder, where is this main class instantiated? Where do we call new main? And where do we initialize the assets class and then call that class? So we don't do that. Instead, the Ribarich Generator WordPress sets up dependency injection. And that means that if you create a new class, and now for the purposes of this, let's say we want to hook into this Astra hook called Astra entry content before. And we're going to make a new class for that, and let's call it Astra hooks.php. Okay, and I'm gonna, so namespace is cool, and I'm gonna say class Astra hooks. Okay, and here I want to demonstrate the concept of dependency injection. So let's say that we actually have some other class, and let's say we're gonna call it content class.php. And let's say that this content class, so I'm just gonna copy this. I'm gonna call this content class. Let's say that it has some method called render content. And let's say that it just echoes out H2, you are awesome. Okay. And now in this Astra hooks class, let's say that we make an init function. And in this init function, we want to hook into Astra entry content before. So add action, Astra entry content before. But now I want to add a method from this content class. I want this method to run. How do I do that? So I make a constructor, and in the constructor, I do public content class. Is that how I call it? Yes, content class. And then here I can say array this content class. So that's the object, and then the method name is render content. So what this is going to do is when the init function runs in Astra hooks, it's going to hook into the Astra entry content before, and then this render content function from the content class is going to run and output something in that Astra hook. Now we just need to make sure that this init function actually runs. So we need to go back to main, and in main we need to inject Astra hooks. Let's call it Astra hooks, and then we need to call Astra hooks init. And if we do that, if I didn't make any mistakes, you see that now in entry content before, we output that thing. So that is a demonstration of dependency injection. And this is very useful because it makes it very easy to do concern separation between classes. So really, one class should only have one responsibility. And this is very important for several reasons. The main one being separation of concerns, right? So one class only takes care of one thing, and then it relies on other classes when it needs to do some functionality that is outside of its domain. Okay, so those are the most important principles of the Generator Ribarich WordPress, and I'm just going to mention one thing in the end. And that is that sometimes you will see that in package.json, there is this zip prod script that zips up this entire theme into one file so that you can deploy it to the server. It's important to note that if you add some new folder and you want it to be included in the zip file, you need to list the folder here in the files entry. So this is a common mistake that people sometimes don't do. So just keep that in mind. If you make some separate folder and if you want it to be included in the zip file, you have to list it over here in package.json. Okay, so that's it. And I hope this gives you a good overview of how to work with Generator Ribarich WordPress and modern coding principles in general.